Hare Krishna. Welcome back to our study of the Yoga Sutras. Today we continue our discussion with Sutras 6 and 7. So very quickly, seeing the link, how we came to this point. We began this particular book by the definition of yoga, Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha, which is yoga is all about regulating the fluctuations of the mind. And we saw what happens if you control those regulations and what happens if you do not control in Sutras 3 and 6. Specifically, the control aspect is what we saw. The Nirodha aspect is what we saw in 3 and 4. Then what exactly are these mental fluctuations or chitta vrittis is what is this section all about. We saw in the last sutra where Patanjali, he states that there are 5-fold vrittis, or there are 5 varieties of these mental fluctuations. And we saw how they are klishta and aklishta, or which they are painful or painless. So starting from sutra number 6, Patanjali is going to define each of those vrittis or these mental fluctuations one after another. If you remember, we discussed in the last session that a vritti is basically any kind of a change in our mental space. Anything that creates an experience is a vritti. And that is what causes a change in our inner space. So from that point of view, he begins sutra number 6 by defining what are those 5 things that create an experience in our inner space. So this is how he defines these 5 things. Pramana, viparyaya, vikalpa, nidra, smrityaha. Pramana means here the right knowledge, the correct way of knowing things. Any kind of a correct perception, you could say that. Viparyaya means incorrect perception or incorrect knowledge. That is another kind of an experience that we have. Vikalpa means imagination, right? Nidra is sleep, the normal sleep that we have. And smriti means memory. Right? Of course, he's going to define each of these statements in the subsequent 5 sutras. Interesting to note the terse nature of this sutra, where he says, he straight away lists these 5 names. He doesn't even bother to say, what are these 5 things? Right? If you look at this sutra as it just is a collection of 5 terminologies. Right? This is the nature of sutras. They are very, very terse. It is described that a sutra is alpaksharam. Alpa-aksharam means it has minimal number of words, very precise, asandigdham. But while it is still very minimal, it does not create any doubts. Saravat vishvato mukham, which means it is presenting the essence, right? And so on. So there are many characteristics of a sutra. So you'll see that the terse nature, the precise nature, the concise number of words which are to be used in a sutra is very nicely brought out in this specific sutra, where Patanjali is just presenting these 5 terms. What are these 5 terms? To understand that, we need the connection to the previous sutra, which is sutra number 5, where he defines vrittayaha panchatayaha. There are 5-fold vrittis. And the very next sutra, he's just giving us 5 names. So we have to logically connect. Oh, so those 5 terms I'm seeing in sutra number 6 are corresponding to those 5 terms that Patanjali mentioned in sutra number 5. Like that. Another meaning of the word sutra in Sanskritam also means a string, a rope that holds things together. Like in a pearl necklace, what you see on the outside are those pearls, but there is a sutra or a thread which is holding all those pearls together, right? So, and that is another meaning here, that the sutras, they have a very nice logical flow from one sutra to another sutra, and that is a style of presentation or compilation of these sutra texts in general, like that. So, and we see Patanjali is also maintaining that style of presentation, right? So let's now recite this particular sutra. Pramana viparyaya vikalpa nidra smrityaha. Right? So these are the 5 terms that he defines. And let's see the translation. So the 5 vrittis. So what you see in the bracket are things that I added to establish that connection. But otherwise, straight away, this, if you see the literal translation of this sutra, correct knowledge, incorrect knowledge, imagination, sleep, and memory. Period. That's it. What are these 5 terms? These are the 5 vrittis, right? And then he's going to elaborate on each of these, starting with the first term, correct knowledge or pramana. What is this correct knowledge, right? So that he defines in the next sutra, where he says, pratyaksha anumana agamaha pramanani. So these pramanas, the term correct knowledge, the source of right knowledge, he further defines them that they fall into 3 categories. What are they? Pratyaksha, anumana, and agamaha. Right? So it is direct perception, logical inference, and scriptural testimony. So let us recite this sutra. pratyakshanumanagamah pramanani. Right? So let's see the definition, the translation. Correct knowledge, pramana, comes from direct perception, pratyaksha, logical inference, anumana, and scriptural testimony, agamaha. Right? And this is a very important sutra for any new student in this world of Vedic science. What it talks about, this is a very important theme of the Vedic epistemology. What is epistemology? Epistemology is basically the theory of knowledge. How do I know? Right? Because most of the times our knowledge is based on our own opinions, right? But even if they are our own opinions or certain beliefs that we may have, on what basis do I justify them? Right? What is the right way of knowing things? This is a very important science to understand even before we begin our journey in Vedic learning, right? Because we understand that right now, our experience of this world is very much shaped by my mind and senses, which are in a conditioned state. So on what basis can I actually know the right information? How do I not let my emotions cover my perception of the truth, right? And therefore, this whole field of epistemology has been explored and explained to first give us the method of knowing. Even before you learn, how do you learn? What is the methodology of this whole knowledge system? What is the theory behind knowledge? That has been explained. And within the Vedic fold, it talks about, there are many such sources of knowledge. Here in the yoga philosophy, which I mentioned is heavily borrowing from the Sankhya philosophy, they accept three sources of this knowledge. What are these three sources? It starts with saying this validated knowledge is what? One, that which is coming from direct perception, pratyaksha. Right? And this is something that we use every day, right? Even right now, you're actually learning based on the sound which is coming to your senses, right? So direct perception here means where you are heavily relying on your senses. And this is what we do every day, right? We use our eyes to see things. We use our ears to hear things. That is how we learn. When the senses come in contact with the world outside, right? Specifically, they are called as sense objects. So when the senses and sense objects come in contact with each other, we learn. That is the methodology of direct perception. Now, for most of us, we may think, yeah, this is knowledge. This is how I learn. Is there any other way? I thought this was the only way. No, this is not the only way. In fact, more than direct perception, we used the second methodology, which is the method known as Anumana, which is logical inference, where based on my past direct perception, I derive logical conclusions, and that is how I learn things. A very famous example is mentioned in the Vedic text about smoke and fire. Where there is smoke, there has to be fire. So when you are looking from a distance, beyond that mountain, there is some smoke coming from there. You know that there is fire over there. That is why there is smoke. You don't have to actually go there and physically see the fire with your eyes or feel the heat of the fire with your skin. But without direct perception, you actually know based on your logical inference, because in your past, you have noticed that wherever there is smoke, there has to be a source of that smoke, which is fire, right? And based on this connection, you interpret things. And believe it or not, we actually do this every day, right? We use a lot of indications and we conduct our life, whether be it deciding, what kind of purchases to make, or how is the mood of that particular person at this point, right? We all use our past experiences and we logically deduce things, and then we live our life based on that, right? However, there is a challenge in both these methodologies, because both of them, it is described, they are limited by these four inherent human flaws. What are they? It is said, the first term is called karnapatva, meaning that our senses are limited, right? Even I'm using the methodology of direct perception, we know that my eyes cannot see the entire visible range or the entire light range. I only have a small visible range, which is the Vibgyor series. Only the colors in the frequency from violet to red is all I can see. Beyond red or infrared is beyond my range, or less than violet, ultraviolet is again beyond my range. My senses are in that, my eyes are in that sense limited. My ears also have a certain range. certain sounds which for example dogs can hear, we humans cannot hear, right? So we understand that our senses are limited. I cannot fully rely on the wide varieties of inputs that are coming to me. I cannot fully rely on my senses, right? But then beyond the limitation of the senses, right, is the issue where I get illusioned. It's called as pramada. Pramada here means where, like the classical example of the mirage in a desert. There is no water, but my limited senses are seeing a mirage, an illusion. And because of that illusion, I conclude wrongly. I make a mistake. That is called as brahma. And because of that brahma, there is the human tendency, vipralipsa, or tendency to cheat. We do not admit our mistake, right? And this is the real humanness coming out here, right? So because of these four humanly limitations, the methodology of direct perception and logical inference will not always work, especially when we are trying to understand things which are beyond humanly perception, right? And that is where the third methodology, which Patanjali talks about, which is the methodology of scriptural testimony is used, right? Where we rely on scriptures and we try to base our understanding on the basis of the scriptures. Now, what are scriptures, right? Now, somebody may argue that, hey, aren't the scriptures also written by some wise people of the past? Are they also not humanly compilations? So if they are also humanly compilations, then the same four defects that we spoke of are also applicable to them, right? So then how can I rely on scriptural testimony? Well, this is where the traditional sciences, they challenge our understanding, because scriptural testimony is not a humanly intervention, but rather the scriptures are presenting the very fundamental meaning beyond this creation. The word used is Veda. Some of you might have heard this term Veda or the Vedas. Vedas are not just some humanly compilations. The very meaning of the word Veda is knowledge, right? And ask yourself, can knowledge ever have a beginning or an end for that matter, right? It is described that when this universe was created, along with the matter in this universe, it was this knowledge was also embedded into this universe in the form of meaning, or this meaning is better conveyed through a particular kind of an understanding. And this understanding is pervading all around us. It's a kind of a cosmic sound which is pervading all through this universe. And these great enlightened masters of the past, they were able to hear that cosmic sound in their deep states of meditative trance. And that understanding dawned upon them, and that understanding was conveyed in the form of certain words in this form of these Vedic texts, right? So this is the difference, that the Vedic texts, the Vedas are not just, just the external structure of the text, but rather the meaning which has been encoded in those texts. And by our study of scriptures, we are trying to unlock that meaning and unlock that understanding, which those great spiritual preceptors of the past have realized and are trying to communicate to us. And this is what scriptural testimony means, right? And this is such an important aspect. Certain things which may be beyond our direct perception, or which can be way beyond our logic, are revealed through the scriptures. And therefore, it is very important for us to refine our intelligence based on the scriptures. And this is a very important aspect, because at one extreme, one may think that, oh, so if scriptural testimony is highest, so it means that from today, I will just blindly follow whatever is there in scriptures. That understanding is also incorrect, because scriptural testimony does not mean blind following of scriptures, but rather once we read these scriptures, once we sharpen our intelligence, this intelligence pervades into our direct perception and logical inference, which means at that particular point, it's no more direct perception and logical inference. It becomes scripture-based perception and scriptural-based logic, right? Then it becomes not just pratyaksha and anumana, but it becomes agama pratyaksha and agama anumana, scriptural-based perception and scriptural-based logic. And that is what we are trying to do through our study of philosophy, that we are trying to sharpen our intelligence so that we learn to see reality in terms of the words of the scriptures. And that is the the right way to understand the world around us. And that is why, though we talk about scriptural testimony being the highest, even better than that is when we realize the scriptures and develop a direct perception of the scriptures. And that is the highest form of valid knowledge. And that is a journey that we go through, right? So as our study of scriptures and our scriptural understanding progresses, right, we will see that our vision of reality will progress through 3 layers. Right now, we all have a limited vision, a conditioned vision, where our perspectives are very much shaped by our present state of emotions and our past impressions, right? That's how we make all our choices in life. That is how we interpret things, heavily biased based on our emotions and impressions. As we begin our journey in the study of philosophy, gradually we will start looking at the world with an intelligent vision, where your intelligence is now sharpened by scriptures. And now it is not my emotions and impressions which are shaping my, my perspectives, but my vision is now driven by rational judgment based on scriptures, through scriptural logic, and that is how we progress further. But that is not the end. There is the last stage, which is a very advanced stage, where beyond even intelligent vision comes the wisdom vision. Intelligence is something that we can train ourselves, but wisdom is not something that we can train. It dawns upon us. And when that grace dawns upon us, when that wisdom dawns upon us, and this happens when we raise our level of awareness, when our consciousness is at a much, much, much advanced and a higher state. At that state, we develop this, wisdom vision, right? So just to give a comparative, just to compare between these 3, in a conditioned vision, you will say, what I feel is right. That's it. In intelligent vision, you will say, the scriptures are saying this is right and this is wrong. So the right is right and the wrong is wrong, right? But at the level of this wisdom vision, such a self-realized soul goes even beyond the conception of right and wrong, right? At that stage, right is right and wrong can also be right. And at our level, it may seem like a paradox, right? But one has to be at that level to realize this level of vision. Right? And that is a journey that Patanjali is going to take us through, right? Where it's going to take us beyond our conditioned vision, train us in the intelligent vision, and finally prepare us where this wisdom vision can eventually be revealed to us, right? So this is the main theme of this particular sutra, right? And now we will conclude this particular session. In the next sutra, we will see what are the other 4 vrittis. All right. So thank you all so much. See you all in the next session. Hare Krishna.